What's up, everyone? Welcome to the next lesson. Today we are covering the subject of research. It's a very interesting lesson for us personally. AI gives a whole new way of exploring ideas, making the research process fun and organic. It's not like one-dimensional and linear, but spatial and organic. And you'll see what I mean by that in just a moment. We'll have 3 different lessons on research. Today we'll share some general principles of research and go through our final references, the mood boards and different types of them. It's a chill but fun lesson. The second part is all about doing research in Midjourney. Hands-on practice, we'll dive right into all the tricks and settings to explore anything, sharing some nuggets of knowledge as we go. And the third part of this mini-series is more of a fun bonus lesson. We'll go to Leonardo and Magnific to show you some additional tricks, weird ways to explore the projects even differently. Okay then, let's do this. Okay, so first off, if you're new into concept art, there's a source of infinite knowledge and inspiration about that subject, and that magical place is FZD channel on YouTube. It's a pure goldmine, and you'll thank me later. And one really cool and simple idea we learned from Feng Tzu, I hope I didn't butcher his name, but anyway, is that when creating concept art, any kind of concept art, you don't need to figure out everything on your own. Even though you come up with ideas and designs, those can actually be something that exists, and you just put your own twist on top of it. It can actually be 80-90% of existing stuff that you combine together, and on top of that, you have 10% innovation. So let me explain here. And we'll start with that 80-90% part that's kind of existing. And to do it, we'll use Google. That's right. So we want to understand everything about the Silk Road, Kathmandu and Tibet, because that's our setting here. We haven't lived there, we haven't spent time there, we haven't talked to local people, so we need to get a level of understanding of this location. We need to know how people are dressed, what kind of terrain there is, what kind of food they eat, and how they travel. And this will be our 80-90%, recreating this place as much as possible. So we naturally start with Google. At this point, we are just Googling and looking for images, educating ourselves. And one of the themes that kept coming up was the cities of the Silk Road. You can see that there are places where merchants and pilgrims arrive, serving like a cultural or trade hubs. That was an aspect that perhaps interested us even more than the architecture itself. But when it comes to architectural inspirations, Tibet definitely left a strong mark, especially the Potala Palace in Lhasa. Beautiful place, love to go there somewhere, but anyway. We love how those structures function on top of the mountain, how all those multi-story, multi-level and multi-layered buildings function together. It's very distinctive. We also had something on the opposite end. We found some references. As we are just Googling, we are coming across different happy accidents. And we saw those Burmese forms. We didn't even know about them 10 minutes ago. And now we are seriously considering them. Something more organic, blending with the surroundings, almost like growing mushrooms. And what we liked about it is that they feel like they have existed here for 1,000 years. So yeah, layer upon layer, this gives a totally different feeling and we could perhaps take from it. So you can literally use those forms, and that's what we meant by 80-90% existing designs. And moving on, we are even getting inspired by more things. We also consider Kathmandu with this Nepalese architecture. It's something we can use in a more straightforward fashion. We can get inspired how all those facades form a city. We can build similar facade compositions. So yeah, lots of different stuff that you can just, okay, I decide about this one and I go with it. And as a last part of traditional research, we analyze the work of other artists. And here I want to point that out, don't blatantly copy. If you cannot look and not copy, just stick with Google. That's more than enough. In our case though, we want to highlight one artist. His name is Max Bedulenko. I think it's definitely worth highlighting his work because he had a series of images that somewhat originated from Silk Road as well. He created fictional places and structures. It's quite busy. That gives us more confidence that our direction is something that keeps giving and it's worth exploring as an artist. So that's about it for the first part of our research. If you're not used to doing research, just think about it as packing your mind with cool ideas. As simple as it is. Explore, take it easy, let the ideas grow. The more you see and know, the faster and better you design. Moving on, Googling and scrolling through Pinterest is great, but it has a lot of problems as well. it could be frustrating, especially if you are looking for some cool compositions, like color palettes, lighting modes, motifs, and things like that. You might spend hours looking for something, it might not even be there, and you'll get frustrated and discouraged real fast. Makes me kind of wonder, how many cool projects have we lost to fruitless Google research? But anyway, here's where AI research kicks in. We used Midjourney for the next part of our research. We got many interesting references. You'll see how we generated those in the practical lesson, the next one. But I think there's already a lot of ground to cover here. So I think it's nice to have the bigger picture first and then go through how we did them. So yeah, let me walk you through some cool aspects that are hidden behind this visual mess. And color is something that I personally like to think about at every stage of project. I love to ask myself questions, whether I am on the right track, and kind of understand the components, either lightness, hue, saturations, like what should I change and what should I implement to change my color palette. And I want to show you something. We are in DaVinci Resolve, and don't worry, you don't need to have any knowledge of it, but it has a nice feature to visualize color, and I'll take advantage of that. We have a few different inspirations to discuss, and as I click through them, I see that these color scopes change. And without getting too technical, on the right side, there's a brightness chart, something like an advanced histogram. We see that different images have different brightness levels, and that's why the graph changes. And the second graph here in the middle shows the distribution of hues. So the more blues you have, the bigger the spike will be here, around this area. In this graph, it's nice to see the distribution of colors. You can see that that image has the same amount of warm and cool colors. This image is definitely warmer, with fewer blues. And finally, we have images that are practically dominated by warm hues, from yellow to almost red. So we can go through them and decide which ones we like better. Perhaps mostly cool tones with some warm accents. And notice how the sky brightness here is around 80%. And overall brightness of this image is definitely below 50%. We talked about the tone mapping and the PureRef thing before, so that's what I'm referring to. In this inspiration, we have an equal amount of cool and warm colors. You can see that the warm colors range from red to yellow, roughly evenly distributed. And the blues also blend into like a greenish purple. And if we compare the levels of the sky, we can see that the sky may seem bright, but it's actually not that bright, it stays a little bit lower, like around 70 to 80%, so that's like our anchor for the colors. And we can investigate all the possible angles, like the wall color, the deepest shadows, all that. We can have that mental map again. So taking that into consideration, we can see that all the action plays in the lower brightness levels. Another example where we have warmer colors and just a sprinkle of cool colors. Interestingly enough, this aesthetic forces us to make the sky colors a little bit brighter, This time, the sky brightness go to about 80–90%, So it's kind of interesting that we have more warmth, the sky and the levels are brighter, but when you have cool colors, they go darker. You can investigate, you can make the mental map. Color is a big topic, but I just wanted to inspire you that you can see the colors on the graph and analyze how close or far you are from this color palette. If you have any alien colors like purple, we don't want to have purples. So this gives us a better chance of creating something aesthetically pleasing and just try something different than our eyes tell us to do. Okay, so that's about the color. You can choose and then you can stick with it. Next up, you might think that we are going for lighting mode or like a composition, but we will go for something else. Another thing we are looking for is the spatial idea. And spatial ideas are essentially an inspiration for how to build a 3D scene, how your 3D layout should look like. I think many people are not aware of this kind of research or concept in general. If you're having a scene which is like a flat surface with like a block on top of it, it's like pretty basic and you'll have basic compositions from it. But when you have like different levels, like descents, ascents, bridges, towers, it all makes your 3D scene more complex and allows you for more interesting compositions later on. So yeah, when you look at our references, you can get inspired by many different spatial ideas. For example, we can have a large market and stairs going down. We can have bridges and perhaps a second level of shops and merchants. We can have towers, maybe some roads going outside the town square. All of that contributes to more interesting spatial ideas. And again, this will make it easier to capture an interesting slice of this reality. It will make finding a cool camera angle a lot easier. So that's that. Next up, we have composition research, or in other words, how this 3D scene will translate into a 2D image. By the way, bear in mind that we are doing still the 90–80% of research at this point. We don't invent anything new. We are curating, we are choosing what we like, having a clearer and clearer vision of where we are heading. Just wanted to point that out. I think it's kind of cool to realize that this process can be very methodical. We just curate and see what we see fit. Okay, so moving on, this image is our golden reference for the composition. It has the rich spatial idea we were just talking about. We definitely want our composition to be full of life, very busy and dynamic. We will place the camera among the people in the foreground and showcase a lot of details from up close. Also, we want to open the space in the middle to showcase this marketplace. So now we have a clear visual path connecting the foreground, middle ground, and if possible, background as well. We will place some buildings or towers around the square and perhaps have some architecture or mountains looming in the background. So that's that. We will also try to avoid overcrowding the foreground, and we will try keeping a good scale and dynamism. And any architectural lines and characters should draw our attention into the marketplace. That's what we will try to capture. Yeah, and I think it sets a very good guidelines and rules for upcoming image. And yeah, perhaps, okay, last one thing I want to point out is that you can look for some cool and happy accidents. AI often hallucinates stuff, which probably makes no sense, but it can kind of spark some cool ideas in your mind. For example, we can pay attention to what's on the facades. Maybe there are some fabrics, maybe there's some wood, maybe there are some merchant cards or something like that. Keep your mind open. Those unique moments will make this world so much more unique and polished. So yeah, color, spatial ideas, composition and motifs, lots to look for, lots to curate, but when you break it down into categories, it lets you keep control over everything and not second guess as you move to production. Okay, pretty nice research at this point, but we are not done yet. You know, there's one aspect that we are missing, one pretty damn important one. You know, we are missing this 10% of innovation, you know? Even though if we stop here, I think we will have a powerful image, but I think we can push it a little bit further. And in our case, we would go for something that will fit those assets that we started with. But the problem is, we cannot just slap them randomly. I mean, we could, but it would feel a little bit out of place. So we will be more diligent and ground them in this reality. And let me show you what I mean here. This is another mood board we created. It looks absolutely chaotic, but there's a way to this madness. Basically, we blended together multiple images from Midjourney, we blended clay renderings, and yeah, we will walk you through the whole process, how to create such a mood board in 2 lessons from now. But again, let me walk you through some cool aspects that are hidden here. And already I want to say that this is not a ready-to-go solution, but more like a melting pot of ideas, of how those assets can function. We can use some motifs and we might not. We should decide later, but we can get inspired, and this is when we innovate. So we need to be extremely flexible with it. So something that we can take from this inspiration is turning those assets into portals. You know, we can turn them into columns, like this works. We can paint them orange or earthy and, I don't know, maybe split the top part from the bottom, like differentiate the bottom from the upper part with color. We can also perhaps transform them into windows. We can place some cloths. There's many different possible solutions here. And the best part, we don't need to change the assets right now. We don't need to remodel them. We'll decide how to approach those assets as we model and render and as we are flexible and innovate, you know? So we can keep that in mind for the future. And that's about it. I hope you enjoy our little breakdown of our research, because there's even more research in the next lesson. Next up, we do research in practice. So yeah, see you there.